So yeah, third edition of Infra Gardens, same vibe. We always put a lot of effort in finding great venues, creating a vibe for to empower valuable networking sessions, and of course having deep discussions about infrastructure and Web3. So we are having 3 panel discussions on the agenda today. We start with the first one now, the rise of TEs within DePIN, and then we have 2 other panel discussions later on. And in between, of course, feel free to grab a drink, food, and network with all of the people that are here. Thank you so much for joining again. And now I would like to kick it off with our first panel and the great panelists here. We have Zheng, who is the co-founder of Automata. We have Marvin, co-founder of Fala Network. Alex, CEO of Secret Labs. And Giuseppe, who is DevRel at IoTex. So 4 panelists with expertise within DePIN. And this is also the topic that we kick off. So to start with the first question, we also talk about trusted execution environments, a hot topic that was discussed this year in Denver as well. How does each of your projects actually empower TEs within DePIN?
So at Automata, actually what we are focusing on really is to kind of like provide trust, basically extending trust to the entire Web3 ecosystem. And the way how we do it is by extending the trust from the hardware up to the kind of like upper layers. So like you might be asking, how can we actually contribute into this particular DePIN ecosystem, right? Think about it, like DePIN is a decentralized network, might actually be physical by itself. And if we can actually give this, all these different nodes a kind of like confidence or guarantee that it is one, genuine, 2, we can give certain, what's that called? Confirmation of the integrity of the entire system. Then we can extend the trust to the nodes in which the nodes can further on and do other stuff. So, yep.
Yeah, so I joined like another fancy event a couple of days ago, you know, for IoTex, the DePIN summit, and it's great. And I talked with a bunch of DePIN projects there. So basically, we are all DePIN projects, like, but kind of a couple of years ago, and no matter it's a decentralized CDN or decentralized mobiles, hotspot providers. The basic module for DePIN is that anyone can provide any equipment or hardwares to the network, and network can just reward people based on scores or points to them, and the network could use the power of these physical hardwares and create common benefits for human, for society, etc. And based on that basic model, you see there's one key challenge for every project, which is how I can ensure the equipment is can't be evil. I can't cheat. Right, because there's the nature, willing behind it. I want to just my equipment to show more power, like a stronger compute or like higher storage, space. So a basic concept of all our projects where we're using TE is the same challenge with all of these DePIN projects. How you can make sure when some equipment provide some resources to this network and it can't cheat. So this is the reason why Fala is using TE to make sure the computation power calculation inside each compute unit is secured. And of course there are other fancy functions, but we can go through that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. So I would argue that any blockchain is actually a DePIN network, right? Because it's a decentralized network, a permissionless network of nodes that are running some stuff and providing some service to the community, right? So in this sense, Secret Network is, and Bitcoin for that matter, is a DePIN project. But in a more narrow definition, actually Secret Network is a little late to the game. I don't think we have any projects running DePIN applications on Secret. I hope we will get some interest, but we are more on the TE side, so Secret Network is actually secured by using TE. All our smart contracts run inside trusted execution environments, so all the inputs, outputs, and contract states are confidential. And that might be very useful for DePIN, especially when we're talking about storing data, right? All those cameras or all those devices that measure foot traffic and other stuff. When they store data, they might use a TE-powered blockchain to have the data encrypted but available for everyone with access controls in a decentralized way.
I want to know more. All right. Well, before I start, I just wanted to say I just want to make a remark, thinking that it would be cool to also talk about the rise of DePIN within the Web3. Because last year, when I would go and talk to people and talk about this like machine economy and like incentivizing people with token rewards to provide infrastructure for networks, etc., people would look at me like, "What are you talking about?" And then after 20 minutes conversation, then they would start understanding. Now we just go and say DePIN, and people starting to understand what we're talking about. So it's great to see the interest, and it's great to see that finally Web3 is coming up with some use cases that are very relevant and very juicy for the end consumers of all these DePIN applications, and they have actual real-world use cases, which is great. So that's done with the remark. I wanted to sort of echo what you guys were talking about. Like, even though IoTeX or Fala or Secret Network or Automata were sort of like tackling this with like some nuances, I think the core idea is the same. We have these decentralized physical networks. How do we decentralize the whole processing in a verifiable way? And how does that translate into then the already permissionless capabilities of smart contracts for like handling token rewards or the logic in the app, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is the same. Like right now, most DePIN projects are basically centralized applications that have these like physical networks of devices that just push some data, compute on this data in like your own centralized system, store it, sometimes decentralized, mostly centralized, and then just like trigger a smart contract. So what we are here to do is to decentralize this whole process. And to do that, you need various modules. It's not just like one, backend infrastructure. You need like a data availability layer. You need, we personally at IoTeX, we solved this with this sort of like roll-up, that's a ZK-based roll-up system. TE is another solution, but at the end, what do you need? You need trust from these devices, because even if you sort of like whitelist devices on chain that are pushing data to your project, and you know that you trust the device, like you need to trust the device, and then on top of that, you need to trust the data that the device is sending, because that can be spoofed too. So that is sort of like the foundation. If you don't have that, the whole system crumbles. And then on top of that, it's great that then all these, rewards are orchestrated on chain, which is already permissionless. The middle part, which is what you guys are doing as well at Fala, then needs to be trustless and decentralized as well. And then we have a full-on permissionless system. And I think that's what we're here. That's Web3, right? So, yeah. That's my intro.
Yeah, I would love to pick up on this, because you just mentioned to talk also about the rise of DePIN. So what after this week in Denver, right? Like, of course, AI was a hot topic, but DePIN, trusted execution environment. What other trends, or is TE the trend in DePIN? What kind of trends have you seen for DePIN this week? Marvin?
Yeah, so I don't know, my personal opinion is that people are not actually utilizing DePIN enough. So think about it, like, for example, Secret Network actually has like a globally connected, globally attestable connected network of enclaves, basically. So what can we do with it? We can actually trust that the machine can perform certain computations kind of like with integrity. can we actually make use of it to have like a kind of like multi-perspective view on certain things? So for example, like those kind of BGP attacks, for example, can we actually make use of this kind of networks to act as a watchdog to provide different perspective from different parts of the global network to see if a particular BGP route has been hijacked? Same for like kind of like DNS hijacking, web defacing, stuff like that. And this is just scratching the surface. For kind of like more physical DePINs, like for example, Helium or stuff like with actual physical nodes, if you are able to attest those nodes and say derive certain geographic information about those nodes can actually act as a kind of like entry point to further attest, for example, a particular device's, location, or we can make use of like ping, latency pings to try and identify if a device is indeed where it claims to be. So I think the kind of like the opportunities for like the use of TEs within DePIN, it's basically a blue sea, and we are barely scratching the surface. I'm actually like waiting for people to further kind of like exploit and use the functionality.
Yeah, my take from this week, for DePIN topics projects in Denver is like, it reminds me, there's a wording saying that like the history doesn't repeat itself, but it sounds similar, right? So many of today's ideas, new projects, I saw similar projects like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, but it's just that in this time the fundamental infrastructure is very ready, and the ready part is because of work, there's so many like OG projects keep working on it, deliver practical solution like LTEX. So that in today when some startups say, hey, I got an idea, I want to like decentralize Tesla charger system, something like that, he will be able to find, okay, I can use this technology with that open source project together, and it can really work. So yeah, this is very similar and been proved for DeFi summer. Many ideas in DeFi also been promoted and mentioned in the last super cycle, like in BitShares, the Bitcoin stage. So it's just when the use cases comes, if you're like in the infrastructure level and the technology level is so ready, then boom, the use case begin to work. So I think my take from this week's is that I think, yeah, yes, there are similar ideas we saw before, but it's just in this time, I think it's ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Marvin. It's really, the technology is ready to go. I want to give the crowd here even some more history than 3-4 years ago. If we remember what happened in late 2000s, this DePIN idea, there was no Web3 back then, but the DePIN idea was there. So does anyone remember a company called FON, F-O-N? No, okay, not surprisingly, but look it up. It was a Spanish company that they created Wi-Fi routers and they sold them to users. And if you bought their router, they promised you access to Wi-Fi to all the other owners of the FON routers anywhere in the world. Like, they had 2 separate networks, right? It was not a privacy concern. So the idea was that, well, I buy this FON router because I need a Wi-Fi thing, but then if I go to another country, there is a chance I will be able to connect to some other router of the same system for free, right, and save money. So, and that, I mean, and they were kind of a darling of the industry for a couple of years because the idea seemed very, very interesting. Then there was a company, Euclid Analytics. I'm not sure it was like DePIN, but they would actually sell devices to physical locations that would measure the phones. Okay, it was like something based with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but it would detect your phone and its MAC address, and then it would detect it in a different place, and then build like a map of foot traffic. Right. Then there was Coma AI. I think it was in the mid 2010s, and they would give you like a small fob to connect to your car. It would connect all kinds of data. Also, and then there was Waze that was pretty successful, and they started by, okay, let's map the world, okay, which was, as I understand, a little fake, because like they bought OpenStreetMaps and that did it for them, but yeah, they did have this feature, sold for $1 billion to Google, pretty nice. Nexar, another company that sells still dash cams and they collect data. So, but all those companies, well, maybe with the exception of Waze, that was kind of very successful. Although, frankly, it loses to Google Maps on all parameters, but they bought it just so that nobody else has navigation, right? That was the reason. But anyway, they kind of failed because it's hard to achieve density without real incentives, right? So the incentive was just some promised service, that some Wi-Fi connection somewhere, didn't work out. They didn't get the density. So now today, companies like Helium or HiveMapper, hopefully with the token incentives, that is very new, right? Before, those companies didn't have a way to pay everyone. I mean, or they could, like Google pays drivers to map, but it's billions of dollars, right? A startup cannot afford that. But with tokens, which you kind of create from thin air, you can actually create this demand, and seems like Helium is kind of managing to do something. HiveMapper is doing something. So I think I agree that, yeah, the infrastructure is there. There are enough people who understand what Web3 is and what tokens are, and they are willing to take the risk of buying the device. And hopefully this time those initiatives will achieve the necessary density to really provide good service, right? Because Helium, if it just has one tower here and another one in Boulder, I mean, routers, right? It won't really work. They need to have them like on every street corner. And that's the challenge, but hopefully with the right incentives and with the bull market coming, more people will be willing to participate in the game and help build this decentralized infrastructure.
Thank you. There are, I mean, many ways of answering this question, but on an infrastructure point of view, like what are the most interesting things that we've seen in DePIN over this week? I think it's the verifiable computation off-chain, right? Because and you know, that can be achieved in various ways, right? You know, there is, for example, Fala, so providing a TE for this verifiable computation over data. We do kind of like the same thing, but in a roll-up based system. But like I was saying earlier, the idea is the same. The idea is that once you have this data, you cannot just, first of all, put it on chain directly, because that's not what blockchain is not made to, like use like that for like these millions of data messages. Computation would be too expensive, so you need a way of sort of like scaling that. And so yeah, that hence the verifiable off-chain computation.
Totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. Just want to add some juicy on that. So you inspire me, like to summarize. I think there are two typical IoT or DePIN projects. The first group is the project that's selling specialized equipment. So for example, if you want to provide some physical resources to the network, you have to buy this specific equipment. Yeah, and the second group is more generic. It's like, I already have a computer, right? I can just download BitTorrent and provide my computer resources. That is the second group of DePIN project. The first group is, I think there's no like which is good, which is bad, but it's easier to build the first type of DePIN projects, but it have a, like very appearance limit, which is hard to scale. Right? If your consumer want to contribute, they have to buy, they have to purchase, and you can't expect the number of the nodes growing that fast as the second group of project. But there's another challenge for the second group of DePIN project. How can you make sure that you can't cheat? The equipment can't cheat with the network. So that's why there are solutions like verifiable off-chain computation or specific IoT purpose network. I guess that's you just help me to clear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And yeah, that depends on sort of like the use case, right? If it's like a digital resource network or physical resource network. The cool thing, which I think what you said sort of like now inspires me, if you think about it from the consumer point of view, right? Yes, like to create, like, let's say you want to start all of a sudden, like provide Wi-Fi to maybe all the like underserved areas in, let's say, South America, just one of our ecosystem projects, for example, Wayro. So you would need, as a company, like a massive investment. The cool thing about DePIN is that maybe some of this investment can be offset to the consumers, not consumers, the infrastructure providers, regular people like us that just buy the router for somewhat affordable cost compared to like you just buying 1 million of them. And then all of a sudden you're creating this infrastructure. And so the cool thing is that maybe, you know, we don't see the full impact of like a DePIN model in the US because we seriously have everything we need, right? But when you start thinking about underserved areas, then I think you see a lot more of the impact, right? It doesn't maybe make sense for a company to just like go and build or go and provide electricity in underserved areas in Africa because it's not just, yeah, not a good business, you know? But for people to just like provide solar energy instead of fossil fuel-based energy, which is a lot more expensive, then all of a sudden it becomes viable, and then all of a sudden you're creating these like networks that are sort of like run in parallel to the like the institutionalized or, you know, centralized large corporations. But on top of that, even now, like in the US, like, you know, I thought you were shaking your head, like, yeah. DePINs are also providing even better infrastructure. Like there is no legacy, there is no like dinosaur Web 2 company with like crazy legacy code and legacy hardware that requires millions of dollars in maintenance. And I think that's where also DePIN based models are very powerful in, you know, in our own sort of like environment.
So do you think that like the rise of like physical resource networks like DePINs would give rise to, say, crowdfunding of infrastructure?
Yeah, I think
yes.
That's the way. Yeah, I think that's the goal. We often talk about this like DePIN flywheel, where like the sort of like the supply starts influencing the demand, which in turn starts influencing the supply again, and you have this sort of like positive loop. You know, so the more when you launch a token, obviously there is an incentive for miners to provide infrastructure. The more miners, then the more the network grows, which means you reach sort of like a network effect or a critical mass so that your end users start benefiting, which then increases the demand for your token, price goes up, more miners, more infrastructure, maybe people start building on your infrastructure as developers, and the loop goes on and on.
I think helium is a great example of that. Exactly. It is, first it's happening in the United States, because in the United States there is this oligopoly of the mobile carriers that are super expensive, like 5 times more expensive than anywhere in the world. I mean, the service, and people can't afford paying $1,500 for this home device. And we are witnessing that Helium is now selling mobile plans. Now, I don't know how much of the usage is really going through their infrastructure as compared to just leased infrastructure from others, but that is a great example of this thing happening. And also in the States, there are a lot of like monopolies or duopolies like Google with their maps, right? So people, there is a drive. I mean, people want to like, screw Google, let's build our own decentralized maps that are better. So I think that's one of the drivers for Hive Mapper and maybe others to go there. So I think this flywheel is kind of, it seems to be starting. Let's put it this way. I don't know the exact numbers, but it seems to be starting.
Let me share. Sorry. Yeah. Let me just share.
Last point to this. We need to get back to TEs.
Yeah. Let me just share maybe one use case I see in Helium Mobile. So you know, I'm not from States. I'm living in States. I'm originally from China, so it's kind of immigration, right? And I have some like common groups with the other immigrations, the other like Chinese immigration group. And one day it surprised me that someone is talking about selling the Helium mobile SIM card in the immigration group. And why? No KYC and cheap, and there's no like monthly subscription payment. When you're done, you can just drop it. So it surprised me. This is the first time when I realized, okay, DePIN begin to work into reality and help the people that ATT, all of these big companies don't even care about. So yeah, just want
Great
to share.
example. Thank you, Marvin. Yeah, I would like, overall, or we can summarize this episode here just now, that DePIN is actually the real Web3 use case, right? Like also saying everyone contributes, right? The example that you gave. So beautiful, very, very great examples. I would like to bring this back to trusted execution environments, yeah? That I think a lot of people here in the room are also interested about. And I need to pick up a deep question that we discussed, inspired by actually Silvan here in the audience, at the last event this week that Fala hosted with Oasis and Secret Network. And the question came up, of course, trusted execution environments can be verified by the developers, but there's still a minimal trust that we have to outsource to the hardware manufacturers. Of course, it's very minimal, but it impacts the chips that are actually lying in the trusted execution environments. And we discussed, or actually in a deeper conversation, how we could solve this issue in Web3. Question to you now, as people that use specifically U3 or leverage trusted execution environments, what are some of the ideas or projects that you implement on solving this problem, or are you following along? What are some of the ideas that we can work on to solve this problem in Web3? Zheng, yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll start first. So when people complain about like, you have to trust a particular manufacturer or stuff like that, it kind of like reminds me of something. Like it's basically risk management if we boil down to it. Just to preface it, like I guess most of us get here by flying here, right? Like there are risks involved, like in taking a plane. You have to trust the manufacturer of the plane, because if they don't do their job well, I don't think you'll be here. You have to trust, for example, the person, the mechanic that is actually servicing the plane, etc., etc., etc. So do we actually not take planes because we have to trust them? No.
You can take your own plane. So we want to talk more about like what are things to actually solve.
Yes, exactly.
This issue.
So you see, if you take your own plane, then you have to trust. For example, unless you want to build the whole plane yourself, service the plane yourself, or like fly the plane yourself. Even if you build your own plane, you have to trust the person that manufactured the part for your plane. So it goes all the way down to the rabbit hole. But look at what we are kind of like devising. We are coming up with, say, laws or rules to kind of like mitigate some of the risks. There are certain SOPs that we follow for the kind of like the servicing of the planes, and then we make sure that there is this separation of responsibility between the aircraft manufacturer, the operator, the pilots, and each of them have a role to play. And we have organizations like FAA that make sure that everyone does their part, right? So this thing can actually be kind of like interposed into the entire like Web3 ecosystem. You have a segregation of responsibility between, say, the manufacturer of the hardware, the operator of the hardware, and people who use the hardware. And then you have certain economic incentives or disincentives that prevents people from using it. So yeah,
I think that's a great example of how to accept the trust. I just wanted to encourage the discussion on what are some ideas, research ideas that can actually empower to not accept the trust. Alex, if you want to comment on this.
Yeah, so in the last event, Sylvain painted a very dark picture to us, which may be true, the idea, and sorry for stealing your thunder, that, presumably all the T's may be compromised and the CIA or whoever might have. But, well, this hopefully is not true, not very probable. But what is probable is that there may be bugs or maybe even backdoors. Again, hopefully not, but, we don't know. So we should trust. Well, you know, our motto is "Don't trust, verify," right? And here it's kind of hard to verify, really, because it's a black box. The TE is a black box. But what we can do potentially is just try and use different types of TEs in one system and hope that they won't be all broken at once, or at least not by the same person or the same player, so that they will not collude. So if there are 2 or 3, then I think the risk would be declining exponentially. So and then it's easier to live with the thought that some of the TEs may be compromised. So our approach would be to research that. It's a lot of engineering, right, and making our code now ported to something else other than Intel SGX. But this is the direction we will be taking to make the network much more secure.
I wanted to echo what Alex was saying, like other various ways. Like there needs to be a little bit of trust in the CIA watching every move you make. But on top of that, you need to be able to verify running maybe various or using various techniques, right? One could be, for example, which sort of like plays with what IoTeX is doing, right? I was talking about earlier about the roll-up system for verifiable computation. So you could even run ZK prover in a TE, and then basically they sort of like kind of like check each other out. There could be a bug in your prover, then you rely on the TE. There could be something in the TE, and then you rely on the ZK prover. And then if the two are matching, then you know that, okay, cool, move on. If not, then there is a problem. So obviously, downside of that, yes, it makes the system much slower. I mean, I think one of the coolest things, for example, about Fala with your approach is that it's fast, you know, and it's like sort of like not a steep learning curve. You know, you can write a program in Node.js, and most people know how to do that. There are, you know, obviously like ZK frameworks like RISC-0 that sort of have like a lower learning curve. But yeah, you definitely don't have to like create your own circuit, which requires, you know, a lot of expertise. So yeah, I mean that's maybe one of the solutions. But
I'll try to be brief. So I think Angel Miller, like in Secret's event speech, mentioned a God protocol, like presented by Nick Szabo in 1997, and the God protocol means like it's a perfect multi-party computation protocol. Like basically whatever you get is, you know, input, and you can verify it perfectly. But still today, we don't have it yet. So, but the world keep running, you know, and we are trying, you know, there's so many engineers and, you know, open source teams trying to reach that goal with all of the, you know, possibility. So for my personal, I think the mission of Fala is not, you know, we take TEE as a belief. No, we treat it as a tool. Because our goal is to provide decentralized off-chain computation that people can verify it. And if there is some more technology or new innovations can, you know, boost, you know, speed up the innovation curve, then we will try to use it. So yeah, TE is just a tool we are using now, but it doesn't mean like, you know, it's perfect. We are not like that kind of team. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so I would just like to kind of like end this discussion off by saying that all is not lost for TEEs. Like we are talking about how can we use TE now, because TE is actually a technology that is available now. You can use it now. Yeah. It's not like some fancy crypto that has not been invented yet, or there are some issues with, say, the practicality of it. Now the thing is, TEs now have this issue of like having that private key being embedded or burnt into the chip when we manufacture it, right? But this is not a kind of like fundamental requirement for these TE chips. There are other techniques, for example, like paths, physically unclonable functions that make use of physical properties of the chip, like imperfection during the manufacturing process, to basically, we can make use of these paths to actually generate the secret keys that is on the chip itself. So no one, not even the manufacturer of the chip, can reproduce this particular thing. There are some issues with it. But that aside, there's this even crazier idea about black holes, and I think you should, yeah.
No, I think I would like to keep. We need to close this. I know the second panel is waiting already, but this is what we want to encourage you to take this conversation afterwards in the networking area. So, DePIN, TEs, or the role of TEs we discussed in DePIN. Let's go back to DePIN, and I would like the closing question to all of you. 3 DePIN projects that are on your watch list. I think, Giuseppe, you can wait for this. You can start with this.
Okay, so both as infrastructure
Besides
and...
your project, of course, and the ones that are sitting here.
Okay. That's a difficult one. I don't know. I think I like Weiru, like I was mentioning earlier. I like. Are you guys a DePIN project? Yep. Would you define yourself? Yeah. Okay. So I like Fala, and as a third one, I think definitely watch out for Bitcoin as the first DePIN.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll name Helium and Hive Mapper, which seems to be pretty far away, in development with devices and users and starting to get coverage. So I'm following them a lot. I even considered buying the thing. It's just very expensive, so I'm kind of not sure if we should go with that. And the third one I learned recently was Constellation AI, I think, and they're doing those foot traffic meters. So that's also an interesting idea that may create valuable data.
Cool, Marvin.
Alex, can I steal the thing for a second? Sorry, I'll take like 15 seconds. You just made me think, like, what if you're like a DePIN enthusiast and like you want to check out these projects and like maybe you know that like somebody's on pre-sale or they're about to like TGE and you want to get in on the action and get some alpha. IoTeX has built this like tool that's like public good, so it's completely free. We don't make anything on it except for the pleasure of sharing. It's called deepinscan.io, and you can check out all the DePIN projects out there.
Perfect, good pitch. Marvin, go ahead, three projects.
Yeah, it sounds like pure alpha, but yeah, of course, IoTeX is the infrastructure to empowering DePIN project to set up, run, and operate. So I think, yeah, definitely friendly, right? So I personally, I'm even before everybody is talking about DePIN, I'm kind of already very into it. I personally like this kind of category of all cryptos is my favorite. So I got a lot of bags in many projects, but I won't share it today because no financial advice. But I really think like Rwave and Filecoin are moving very fast, and that's a very valid use case. It's not something you can't experience with. And so storage, CDN, and decentralized, RPC network. I just try to skip the ticker name, and it's on my top list. Yeah.
I don't think I have to answer because Marvin kind of like just took everything and share it. So, like what he says, decentralized RPC, storage DA, and then actually computation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope everyone got something out of this panel and added some ideas to their watch list. Feel free to continue the networking outside. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you so much.